Thank you. I want to talk very quickly about section SSS of this bill, the film tax credit.
Sure.
And in this bill, we're extending by 2 years the film tax credit. So when will that end now?
2024.
So 5 more years at $420 million?
Yes.
So we're basically...
Well, we already, we're extending it, but it still had 2 years. We've already authorized it for 2 years, so.
Right, so we're adding $840 million.
In the out years.
Correct, and 5 years times $420 million, we're over $2 billion. Why the film industry?
The number of what has happened since we established this credit is we've had an incredible number of jobs created as a result of this tax credit. In Brooklyn, in Queens, in the Bronx, there are studios that didn't exist before. There's a tremendous amount of economic activity and revenue that's generated by this industry being here in New York, upstate New York also. This is an important industry for New York State.
Why is the amount $420 million? It's a huge amount. It's the biggest tax credit we give. Why that number?
It's as I said, this is a tremendous economic, the credit brings tremendous economic benefit to all parts of New York State. We get a lot of revenue from the employees as well as all of the local impact, and that's a number that we've been able to settle on.
Is there a point of diminishing returns? In other words, if we gave them $300 million instead of $420, we'd have another $120 million to use for tax relief for other industries. We could use it for teachers. We could use it for all kinds of things. Would we lose any of this activity if we were still giving away $300 million? We'd still be the leading state.
As you know, a credit is off of the income, so it's not like we have the dollars to spend. This is a credit off of the income that is generated by this.
No, it's on their below-the-line production costs. So whatever they spend, we give them, in New York City, a 30% refundable tax credit. Outside of New York City, we give them a 40% refundable tax credit, which means often their tax liability in New York State is eliminated, and we end up cutting them a check. We cut Hollywood filmmakers a check out of the pocket of the taxpayers.
So this is since it's been I just want to go back to when we were talking about the impact in the state. It's estimated that this program has generated, I believe since its existence, 200 and, well, I'm not sure the exact time frame, but 237,500 jobs in the
Are those
state.
full-time jobs?
Some maybe, some aren't.
Do we know, you're citing a number, do we know what percentage of them, or how many are full-time, how many are year-round, how many provide health insurance, or how many are temporary? It's a big nut, $420 million. We should know what we're getting for it.
Yeah, where is it? Just show me where it is. Obviously, some of these, the economic benefit has been $3.2 billion. Some of these positions may be full-time. Some of them will run if it's a several-month production for if it's one of these TV shows, a serial, be a shorter period of, be a limited period of time. Have movies being filmed. It depends on what's being filmed and for how long that filming goes on.
Are you familiar with, there's a study out of the Michigan State. It says 2,763 short-term film jobs, which is a lot of what we produce. Extras count as a job, caterers, set makers. 2,763 of those jobs equal only 250 full-time year-round jobs. The kind of jobs that, you know, can feed a middle-class family here in New York. So when we cite a big number, that's really a very small number of full-time equivalents.
Well, a lot of these people will go from one shoot to another shoot, from one show to may work on one show, work on another show. You know, when this tax credit first got established, I recall walking with some of my Brooklyn colleagues starting a studio, and when they heard who we were, people who were working there were just ecstatic about this credit. I recall one woman saying who lived...
I'm sure they were.
One woman who lived in Brooklyn saying it's the first time she's not had to go to work out of a hotel room, that she's been able to work out of her own, that she's able to stay in her own apartment and have a job here in New York City. We heard that for many people, that they had to leave New York before this credit to be able to go to a site where they could work.
Right, and you'd agree if New York State was paying 30 or 40% of the production costs of a manufacturer, a pizzeria, a dry cleaner, a pharmacy, name your business, they'd be ecstatic about it also.
Well, you know, this is an industry that's a national industry that can go, not only go to another state, but as I said, a lot of people were filming in Toronto. We were exporting our employees out of New York State. It's a mobile industry, and we've really captured New York as the central hub for so much of the filming that takes place in the country and even nationally.
Right, but if we eliminated this, got rid of all $420 million, we'd still have some film production here, wouldn't we? I mean, Law and Order was here before the credit. One of the shows that is subsidized is Saturday Night Live. Saturday Night Live is older than I am. We give them $15 to $17 million a year to film in New York. It was never going to be live from Vancouver. It's Saturday night. It's always been live from New York. So why are we giving them $15 to $17 million every year?
All of these credits add up to increased income in New York State. Increased economic activity, increased income.
If you spend $420 million, you're going to get a tremendous amount of economic activity. Do you think there's an opportunity cost? In other words, if we took this $420 million in tax relief on one industry and gave it maybe to individuals and reductions in the personal income tax, or gave it to another industry, or reduced other taxes, there would be tremendous economic benefit also? Jobs created? Chips? That's for you, Phil.
I mean, we do give, I think, over $1 billion in middle-class tax cuts as part of this budget. So,
you know, in 2013, the governor commissioned a study to study the tax code, study the subsidies, and there was an addendum that wasn't published, but it leaked out. And if you will, can I read you a quote from it? These are Governor Cuomo's own economists studying.
I have nothing else to do.
The tax code is
tonight,
good.
So
Well, it's $420 million. It's one of the biggest things that we're going to do tonight. The film production tax credit, now generally 30% of qualifying costs, is large relative to industry profits and tax liability. Because the credit exceeds tax liability many times over and is refundable, in effect, it is a program of cash payments by the state to credit recipients. It is not clear from our analysis that there is sufficient justification for the size of the film credits. The state should consider scaling back the credits and monitoring the film industry closely to determine the impact on its activities should such a cutback occur. So that's 2013, so that's 2.5 billion tax dollars ago. I know a lot of people were upset about Amazon. I wasn't a fan of the Amazon deal. This is bigger than the Amazon deal. In the past, it's going to double what the Amazon deal was, and for the most part, Amazon was going to create full-time jobs. Here we're talking about a lot of part-time jobs, and over 5 years, $2.5 billion. Why is this a good investment? I'm going to vote against this. You're the proponent of it. Why is this a good investment versus something else?
I have said that this is I'll just repeat what I've said, that this is a credit that has produced economic activity throughout our state. It has broad support in communities around the state, and we are continuing it.
Do you remember a couple of years ago, Sony Pictures was hacked? Some of their emails became public. Do you remember that?
Sure.
There were emails from the president of Sony to other executives in the film industry. Our governor was going to California. He raised $300,000 in one night, and there's these hacked emails that no one was supposed to see, but they became public, said, hey, we have to raise $50,000 for Governor Cuomo's fundraiser here in California, explicitly because he's a defender of these tax credits. So Hollywood filmmakers are giving thousands of dollars to a political figure, and they're getting billions back over time. Is that troubling to you?
As I said earlier, the film tax credit enjoys wide support amongst communities around our state and amongst many of the members, tremendous support amongst the members in this House.
Did you read a story last month now, in March, that HBO laid off 200 workers in Long Island?
No,
It was big news. 200 New Yorkers lost their jobs at HBO. HBO, from 2014 to 2017, received $157 million in this supposedly great job-creating economic engine that we're going to extend today. Do you think if a company lays off...
I must have missed that article that you described.
Okay. Do you think a company that receives $157 million, about $30 million a year, should lay off employees in our state?
You know, I can't comment on something that I don't have knowledge of.
Well, let's be hypothetical. A company receives $125 million over 4 years. I'm sorry, $157 million over 4 years. From New York State. Should they be able to lay off employees in New York State? Is that a problem? It's a problem for me.
You know, we can certainly look at that instance and look at...
Should we look at that before we spend another $420 million every year for the next 5 years?
It's a broader question about tax credits in general that you're asking. The issue about increased transparency in these in credits that are happening, and the HBO closing apparently is closing their facility as part of a reorganization plan. And they are, for the Bloomberg article I'm reading, some of the approximately 200 employees will transfer to new facilities in Manhattan from the Long Island location. So I'm not really sure that they're...
If you keep reading, some of them
that
are
they're
losing their jobs.
leaving our state. They're just leaving the island.
Keep reading. They're leaving our state. Some are leaving our state. But I'll move on. Do you know about the Disney-Fox merger? Two big media companies are
You obviously have
merging.
a lot more time than I do to keep up with some of the news.
Disney and Fox, we've given $112 million to. They've already laid off 20 people. They're going to lay off 3,000 more, not all in New York. But my point is, we're giving them lots of money. They're the biggest recipient of a tax credit. They're still laying off people. They're mostly creating part-time jobs. I think we should look at reducing it. I think before we extend this to $420 million, we should know how many are full-time, how many are part-time, how many have health insurance. But that's not the case. I appreciate your time. On the bill,
Sure,
very quickly.
thank you.
On the bill, sir.
Thank you. This $420 million is not in a vacuum. We lifted off of Hollywood and we put it on ordinary New Yorkers. That is the signature problem in this state. That's why people are leaving this state. Yeah, Hollywood's coming in with their part-time jobs, but regular New Yorkers can't find a job to feed their families year-round. And we're going to give the biggest tax credit to the most glamorous industry and some of the richest people. I think it's outrageous, and I'm opposed to this bill.